Okay, great. Good evening and welcome to the special meeting of the Orange Board of Finance, Thursday, May 7th. I'll call the meeting to order at 7:06. In accordance with Governor Lamont's Executive Order 7B regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting will be held remotely with no in-person attendance. This meeting will be broadcast live on OGAT. Since we're not sitting around a table, I figure instead of having everyone introduce themselves and we talk over each other like I messed up the last meeting, I'll call your names out and just wave, say hi or something. So we'll start with Pat Romano, PJ Shanley, Kevin Moffitt, James Leahy.
Good evening.
Joe Nuzzo.
Good evening.
Deb Satonic. And John Cifarelli. Thank you, everyone. Before we start, I just wanted to make a couple comments and thank everyone, because this has been a difficult budget to say the least. Everyone's availability for all the issues we had to deal with, whether it be this past weekend, whether it be any time in the past, everyone's been very helpful and accommodating. We've obviously have made cuts to various areas that I'm sure in better times we would rather have not have. With that being said, thank you all. I think we did the best we could. And I will jump to item number 2, which is discussion and approval of transfer. Mr. Cifarelli.
Okay, they'd like to continue the street paving this year. And Mr. Britton gave me this memo the other day and asked, again, because these requests are over what I'm allowed by our finance regulations to transfer, at least the $60,000 one is. But since he was adding 2 other ones, I figured I'd throw them in and let you discuss them and decide whether and it'll go into streets and bridges account, and then that money will be used to pave some of the roads this year.
Sounds good, except I heard a weather forecast that we might actually have snow and sleet on Saturday.
Really?
I hope they're wrong.
Yeah, above 84. But yeah, it is forecast.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, the high is 47. Wow.
But hopefully Orange is fine, so we won't need the snow plowing.
We're moving backwards. We're not going to get snow in the winter. We're going to get it in the spring now.
Locusts, snow in the May. I mean,
It's been a crazy year.
John,
So
we'll never
with-
get pitches
with-
and catches.
With Jim, you don't know how much I want them.
oh, you know what? Time out, everyone. I already made a mistake. For those at home watching,
Oh, right.
Mr. Leahy,
Sure.
nobody caught that.
What
For the
did he
next
do?
15 minutes, since we can't have public participation, if you have questions or comments, please email the finance director, and his information is now on the screen, jcifarelli@orangect.gov, and email any comments and questions, and anything we receive in the next 15 minutes, we will read and bring into our meeting for the record.
Kevin, we also need the name, address, and phone number, right?
Yes, sorry. And with your email, include your name, address, and phone number. So, and anything that comes in after that, just because of everything we have to deal with, we will hold off to our next meeting and go from there.
Okay, so if people are watching, I'm going to leave this up for about 20 more seconds. And then as John tells us more, I'll just take it off and we'll get to that one. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. So with this $90,000, if you agree to transfer it, they have about $250,000 in the street and bridge account. So that'll give them about $340,000 this year to do paving. Hopefully with the price of oil down, the price of asphalt will be down and we'll get a little more for our buck this year also.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the transfers?
So move.
I'll second it.
Second by Kevin. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, unanimous? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 3, discussion and approval of minutes from April 20th of 2020.
Okay, would you like me to start out on that also?
Of course.
I did, huh?
All right. Myself followed by you, Jim. Page 2, at the very top, third line down where it says town website and the Amity website, that strike Amity website, it should be in the town clerk's office. Our budget isn't put on the Amity website. Then under item 2, same page, the second bullet where it starts, the board members did not feel that it was appropriate for Amity to, it says assign. I think that probably should be spend surplus money.
Hey, John, which page? I apologize. I put this up
Yeah.
on the screen so people at home could see.
Page 2,
Page 2,
under,
good.
under Amity update, the second bullet,
Okay, thank you.
the first sentence there, see where it says assign? I think probably that word should be spend surplus money.
Yes, I think that's a stronger verb for sure.
Right. And then if we go to page 3, my last comment, under number 4, budget workshop, the last paragraph in there that starts with me. I think that should say, Mr. Cifarelli noted that working with the chairman and vice chairman, they identified an additional $135,000 in reductions that could be made to the upcoming budget.
I remember that conversation. Yep. I think that's I
Okay,
remember it happening too.
yeah. Deb, do you have that?
Yeah,
Okay, and then I do have one more. The very next line under bold, under Mr. Larry Leahy made a motion to approve 135,260. I would say in reductions.
Okay.
This sounds a little better.
Do you want to change that, John, or in the paragraph above that where you have the same words in cuts?
Yeah, I did. I had changed that.
Thank
Same
you.
word. That's it for me.
Okay. All right, so you mentioned my name, so I might as well give you what I got for the team. Back on page 2, on the update. Joe, I don't know if in that month, now these are notes from, I'm wondering whether 859 is the right number, Joe, okay? In other words,
859? Oh, yeah, okay.
yeah, I think that was in February and it was reduced significantly. I can go look for the actual number. I got the files right here if you want. So let me do this.
Yeah, it wasn't that much in our last meeting. I thought it was it 4 change?
Yeah, it was 4 change. Here, I'll get you the number. Hold on a second. We'll just
Yeah.
jump right to it. All right. I apologize.
Well, I think the 859, and then from that, they took the 300,
300, yeah.
and then they took another 100 for textbooks, so they took 400 out of that.
That's true, Kevin, but the way we've been identifying, here, let me just get the, was this 420 the notes, team? Yeah, here it is. Here, I'll show you. Are you still seeing my screen, guys?
Yeah,
Yes.
got it.
It's just popping open, Joe, and I think, Joe, you and I could probably, whoops,
Let's see.
okay. Net balance, 559.
That was after the 300 came out. Yeah.
That's already out. In other words, Kevin, yes, it depends how you want to call what's the surplus, right? I would agree with you, 859 and perhaps even more if they're taking stuff out of it, that the surplus as defined to be how much of it? the leftover on things they had budgeted, I agree with you, 859.
Yeah.
However, the way we've been communicating it, for example, last time in February, here is the number, right? 779, right?
Yeah.
And that's in the, what they call net balance. And here is the net balance for, now we disagree and we didn't think that they should be taking that money out, but that's at least the way, Kevin, we had been saying what they said. And if what you want to put in the notes, that's the, okay? I don't know if I'm coming across clear or not, Kev, so give
Yeah,
me,
maybe we just state, Jim, that it was 859 prior to the 300 coming out for their IT upgrade, something like that.
oh, so he also reported there was a surplus of 859 from which
Yeah,
350,000
Yeah.
right.
or a down payment on the
Yeah, IT upgrade. yeah.
IT upgrade.
Expansion, that IT expansion,
Deb,
that's fine.
are you good with that or no, do you
Yeah.
need a redo?
That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Just want to make sure Deb's got it. Deb, you
I
with-
have it.
Okay, thank you. That was the first item I noticed. Pat, I see your name in the next paragraph, so let's give this a peek.
Right, and yeah, and I have some issues with that.
Okay. Okay, so you'll chime in. Ms. Romano was concerned that the 6 bids for the IT work came in higher
Yeah, that's not.
or they due to the virus pandemic. So Pat, why don't you take over right on that line?
Okay, first of all, I would change the, on the first sentence, instead of Amity to assign, I would say spend surplus money for budgeted items, because that's what they're doing, is spending it. And then going further, Mr. Romano was concerned that the 6 bids for the IT work, if rebid, could come in lower at this point due to the virus pandemic. So it's literally just the opposite of what's in that sentence. If anybody else has better wording for it.
Okay, so you'd say Ms. Romano believes that 6 bids for the IT work would
If-
likely come in lower due to the virus pandemic.
If rebid is likely to come in lower.
Yes, that's, I remember that explicitly.
Yeah.
Okay. Deb, are you good with that?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, good.
I
Just don't
have
wanna-
I have one other correction in that paragraph, just so that I don't miss it. Temporary hold in the midst, although we are all working in the midst, it should be midst, MIDST.
I had that highlighted, but my English is terrible, so I'm glad you brought it up.
In the midst of.
Oh my
yeah, that's
God, the
good.
mist, yep.
It's spell check, though.
Steve missed.
We're all in the midst right now.
Staying on that paragraph.
The last one,
Wait, Jim, can I just add one thing there?
sure,
Yeah.
please, Peter.
On that same paragraph where it says Mr. Shanley also suggested, and this is really nitpicking, but I would say it was more of a recommendation.
Yeah,
Amended rather than suggested.
Stronger word.
So want a stronger verb there.
good.
And team, on the last page, the first bullet at the top, it gets into an amount of money. I believe the amount of money was 450, not 400.
Yeah,
And that's all. Thank you, Kevin.
Anyone else? Okay, then is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
so moved.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it then.
Okay, thanks. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, unanimous. Thank you. Okay, item number 4, Amity update. Mr. Nuzzo, I don't imagine there's a whole lot because they just had a meeting and voted. I don't think your board met on that, right? The finance committee?
Yeah, we did not, I mean, I spoke to John Belfonte. He did say that it was a unanimous vote for it. And I saw, I read the public comments that were made and posted as part of the minutes. And it was very clear to me that the taxpayers were not very comfortable with the spending increases and the hiring of additional staff during these times. I know that, we've spent a lot of effort on that budget, and I know Jim and you and the rest of the board spent lots of time giving great feedback on their budget to deaf ears, unfortunately. So it's very unfortunate that the message is not being heard by them during these times. And I'm not sure what we have to do here, but we are spending lots of effort and the message is not getting through to those who are the decision makers. So it just seems to be an ongoing problem, especially during these times. And now there's remote learning happening, and hopefully we'll see what happens in September. But I don't know. I think something has to change here. And I think Jim did a great job with his presentation and his analysis of the unemployment numbers. They're staggering and they're pretty scary. So I don't know what more we have to do to get our message across to them, but it's falling on deaf ears.
And I personally think that had this year gone to a referendum, it would be the first one that was voted down in a long time.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's an opinion. And before I move on to, thank you, Joe, before I move on to item number 5, I know, because I watched the meeting from here.
I did as well.
What's that?
I did as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and that everybody works hard. Their board works hard. They're trying to do the best thing. But I look back, and Chief Gagney and Chief Martin's come to us every year, and every year he presents phenomenal data. I mean, he posts the monthly, calls that they do on his Facebook page, on the Town of Orange, for increasing officers. We have new things developing on Marshall. We have all this, and we can't fund that right now because of the situation we're in. And with their 2 new hires, they had a study done, and it says we should do this. Well, somebody should have said, no, this isn't the time, because I think, and all our department heads that come in with great, they do their job, they work hard to come up with their budgets, and we just, this was not the year for a lot of things. But I just think, the chief with his data, and I think everyone will disagree, agree, not disagree. He comes in with great information on every statistic and shows the need for service and the calls and the medicals. And, again, we have a year where we just could not add certain positions. And we unfortunately do make the tough decision, or fortunately, I think for the residents, make the tough decisions and do the best we can. And others just pass it on, and the taxpayers can pay it. And I don't think that's right. So that I will stop talking and move on to item number 5, Mr. Leahy, the vice chairman's report.
Yeah, I finished a series of slides. If there were 2 slides to decks that might be useful for our discussion, I think it would be the one that I sent you earlier this afternoon, hot off the press, maybe. Also, there would be one that I sent you back on our last meeting, April 20th. If you recall, that was our last meeting, and I sent one probably around between 5 and 6 o'clock at night. And so what I propose is, we may be looking at both of them. That last meeting's PowerPoint presentation had really 2 earlier PowerPoint presentations. The one I made in February, which was the day we had the meeting with the Amity leadership, the Amity Board of Education, and then I believe the other one was on March 5th, when we had a meeting with, and they presented in both cases their budgets, their initial budgets from the Orange Board of Education and the Orange Board of Education Administration. So those two, certainly this one that hopefully I fairly presented for you. You can be the judge of that. But why don't we just get started, unless there's, Kevin, anything else you want before we?
Yeah, I'd rather not go back to February and March because I think we've done a lot of that our last meeting, and I think what you have for this evening is much more pertinent.
Okay.
But we can see what everybody thinks, or our discussion goes on.
Okay.
And some of that might be pertinent, Jim, when we get to the budget workshop part to finalize this.
Correct. I was just saying have those available.
Oh, okay.
I agree with you 100%, Kevin. Okay, well, without further ado, are you seeing my screen now or not?
No.
No? Okay, thank you for the feedback, as they say. Okay, how about now?
Coming, yeah.
Coming.
There it is.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, so I'll have to move our pictures. It's in the way of me seeing actual screen. There's a couple of things that are in this presentation. Perhaps I had a chance to see it, perhaps not. We should be able to run through them. I tried to be as clear as I possibly could, but be thorough as well. But there's some recent activity that we as a board did. There's been Connecticut unemployment data. We got two sets of that, two sets of slides. They cut at it differently, and I'm hoping to educate and make sure we present it fully. And also, since I also sent you this Excel file, if you want to do any personal assessments, that there's lots of analyses can be done. You now have that Excel file. The second thing is the Orange Board of Finance. Joe had mentioned input. We'll talk about that, but we as a group worked this weekend, gave input to Amity District meeting last Monday on their budget. We'll talk about that. And would be an Orange economic development update, and that'd be a lowest priority. And then on the cover page here, you can see that the data was from the Connecticut Department of Labor, and there's a website that you can get to right there. Okay, so that's helpful for everybody. So the first thing I want to mention is that there's been quite a week, to say the least. I see somebody in one of these things talked about how they just were teaching at Amity and had input in the last week 44 and a half hours. I might have put that in over from Saturday, Sunday, and Monday on this. So I understand what more than 44 and a half hours of activity means, particularly when it wasn't planned. Here's my summary, and team, have at it. Consider it a V2 or a V3. I'll walk you through. So for the people that might be watching at home, first of all, let's get comfortable with the top here. We've got 4 major items that we did, but if you can see that there is dates of the month, for example, the first box at the upper left would be April 30th. What did we get? Well, Jimmy Zioli sent me some Connecticut Department of Labor data for 7 weeks from March 1st to April 12th. And I did some analysis, and I found out that 772 residents of Orange had filed an initial unemployment claims, as we will see. But the headline is that would mean that 15% of the Orange households, Kevin gave me the number of households, and if it's the wrong number, we can flip it into Excel and get a different percentage, but it's pretty accurate. And 15% of them have filed unemployment claims. And also, you'll find out that the Orange and state data are very similar, and we'll show graphs on that. On Friday, I think all of us got this mailer from Amity. It was called Explanatory Text About the Budget. We called it over the weekend the Yellow One-Pager. It talked about the budget. It mentioned in that one-pager that residents may provide comments. And since I didn't know how much we've been, going to meetings and everything, but it seemed like an opportunity for us to provide comments, but they would be due at 12 noon on Monday. And there was something on the website at Amity to do that. A note I got from Pat on Friday night, you guys remember that Saturday morning, that I sent out a note to the entire team, and by 11 a.m., 4 of the 6, 2/3 of you already had given me inputs, and 2 others told me they'll get to me probably somewhere over the weekend. It was a nice weekend, if you remember. First we've had all spring. What am I to say to somebody who's with the daughters or the kids and going, I'm not on their case. All right, would like to get your input. But the response from 4 was beautiful. And we, in my world, what we call version 1, V1, was already out there and fed back to you by 11 o'clock. We also held a discussion with the ABOE chairman, and we agreed through discussion, Kevin, me, and the chairman, we wanted to read the input into the meeting on Monday. We didn't need anybody else to summarize it for us. Now, like with all teams that I've been doing over the last number of years, these things that these input documents evolve, and this one evolved to eventually we submitted it, but we reviewed the input on Sunday morning. We crafted a second version. We included now the input from the Connecticut DOL data that's over on column 1 under the 30th, the Thursday. We refined the document to a version 3. I was waiting and got the 2 other inputs from the other members of the OBOF team. And we agreed, Kevin and I, that we're going to put a stop to this by 3 o'clock. I think we're more like 3:20. All right. And we eventually published a version 4, knowing that we might have more input kind of hanging out. And later that night, we shared text with the ABO chairman on where we were in our process. Monday morning, we finalized the input. We knew we had to get it in by noontime. I didn't know someone was actually going to be hard-nosed about the input. Now, I don't feel like we're a resident, right? We're the 6 elected members of the Board of Finance of the organization for which we are paying 50% of the freight. Oh, good. You got it in on time, says somebody to me. It felt funny. But anyway, we contacted the superintendent at Amity, and we mentioned what we wanted to do in terms of the 5 o'clock or 5:30 meeting process to read this information in, which I actually timed, or Kevin timed it, and I read it. That was 3 minutes and 40 seconds. I was informed that there was a need for lawyers because this meeting, we have to add something to the agenda. And I just, anyway, came back by 4 o'clock that we would be unable to read the document at the 5:30 meeting. And either they listened, I listened, other people I heard just now actually watched the Zoom meeting at 5:30, and parts of the document were read in. I think all of you saw the summary that I sent out to the team on Monday afternoon, just before the 5:30 meeting. I actually, after I had my conversation, learning about our inability to read it at 5:30, I went out for a walk, came back in and banged out a summary, and you guys got all that. Tuesday. The third thing we got now is Kevin sends me new Connecticut Department of Labor data, 9 weeks. Now we have 1,000 people from Orange who have now filed claims, which means that almost 21% of the Orange household, someone in that house has filed, which means if you drive down the road in Orange, you go by one house on the left, one house on the right, one house on the left, one house on the right. The next house, left or right, one of the 5 that you've now gone by, someone in that home is filed for unemployment. And once again, the Orange and the state data were highly similar. The last couple of days, we're preparing for tonight. We added the economic development. We reviewed the slides with Kevin, and I modified them and finalized them. So that's what, team, is that a fair summary? Everybody's watching. I wrote this. Is that a fair summary? Because all of you didn't get a chance to input it.
Yes.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yep, I would agree.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
Yes, Jim, good job. Appreciate your efforts as always. Always
Well,
go
that's not
above
what
and
I'm
beyond.
looking for here. What I'm looking for is that everybody sees that this is a fair summary.
It is a very fair summary.
Last call? Okay, going forward then. Let's do it. Okay, so here we are on Thursday. What did we find out? Again, some of you may have gotten this. I apologize. Let's go in. Now, first thing I want to make sure everybody understands something about this. So I created a little graphic. Understanding initial unemployment claims. Here's how I drew it to myself over coffee. some morning, must have been that morning. I get told I don't have a job. So there's a process. The start of the process is you do an initial unemployment claim. And at some point in the future, you're going to be off unemployment. Okay. And in the interim, you're going to do a lot of different things. Understanding that you have to file weekly. You have to, at least most times, you have to show that you're looking for work. Obviously, you're looking for work. You're trying to get your job back. You're trying to get a new job. But typically, if you are on unemployment, the max is 26 weeks. So that's why I put down the 26 weeks. However, if this thing that we're trying to pull off as a nation, this stimulus 2.2 trillion, whereby they're putting money in place so that people, because of the shutdown dictated by the government in a sense, right? We're given money so that your employer pays you and you're not unemployed. So you may not get your money. You may be off in a couple of weeks as a result of the churn of you filed, then you get your job back. Peace. That process may not take 2 to 3 weeks. It may go longer. You know, the business guy, I've listened to Kevin, I've listened to John Belfonte. Joe, you're seeing this in banking, right? The forms in, is the money there? Does the money get back? All that. So the person who is filed to trying to cover themselves, they may be on it for a longer period of time. Maybe that, oh, my store will be opening up on May 20th or whenever the date is, and then I will be paid again. So sometime I just pick 10 to 12 weeks as a concept, right? The third one would be, what if this doesn't do right? Back in 2008, 2009, I believe we extended the 26 weeks.
It's extended now too, as I understand.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Pat. So I was going to put 52, 108, but then I said, well, whatever. I'll just put greater than 26. So I wanted to give a graphic so that everybody, when we start seeing initial unemployment claims, we are talking about the person filing at start. So initial claims only measure the people entering the process. It could be that they come off at 2 weeks. It's not the same as unemployment, okay? It's initial claims. It should be very related. More initial claims, the more unemployment. Got it. I'm just saying it's not exactly the same mathematically. Okay, all good? Okay. Okay, initial claims are applications for unemployment benefits. Initial claims may not result in receiving unemployment insurance. This is right off their website, these two benefits if the individual doesn't qualify. As mentioned, the town of Orange, this is the first pass, right? Thursday's thing, 772 initial claims. Now note there were 7 weeks, but some of those weeks, they didn't have all the stuff submitted that had come in that week. So they were basically giving you a heads up where that's why they'll be in red when you see the data. And then you see the same data for the state of Connecticut. The first analysis I wanted to do, besides the obvious numbers, was what does our curve look like compared to the state of Connecticut, all right, and other towns? And that's where.
What are you in, Board of Finance? All right.
Okay, so here's where we go in this chart. You can see it orange. In March, we hadn't had the closing, right? So when you had 4 claims, 22, 226, 218, you can see the spike here, right? And you could see the spike at 218, 207, 64, 61. Remember that, what you see this red here? That red was, hey, we're not closing those week out type of things. We got more coming from those weeks, but there was the 772. So there's the data there. Let's see, annotate. Oh, here PJ, look at this. I've learned how to do this annotate. This is one of the tips they gave you. So what I was really saying to myself was this. what's our bell curve look like compared to the state's bell curve? And so I just did a percent of the total for each of the weeks at, so 4/772, et cetera. So you could see that ours look very similar to the states, even though the states had far more, obviously. So when you see me saying the states in orange have highly similar profiles, this is the graph that made me come to that conclusion. All good?
Yep.
Okay, if I can only get this to, clear. Oh, wait a minute, undo, maybe that's it. Okay, so here's another one. The state average. Now, I actually did, and that's in the file, is that one of the tabs has this data in it, by the way, 169 towns. I actually went and found their population, not households, their population. And so what I did was I ranked them all, big, long Excel file. And I said, okay, go get the population. I had to, add up all their, the unemployed, just like I did for the town of Orange. It wasn't that hard, actually. So the average across all 169 towns was 5.9. Now, remember, this is population, not households, population. And I used 2018. So, it's the data I could get. And as you can see, 80% of the towns fall into these three segments. You can see the numbers. 37 were between 3.9 and 5.2. 59 were between 5.2 and 6.5. And 39 were between 6.5 and 7.8. And there was a couple of outliers, but other than those outliers, you can see you got a pretty much bell curve. So I calculated the average. I just, what was the lowest, what was the highest within that quartile, each quarter, right? And so you can see the averages and you can see what the range were, okay? So the town of Orange was ranked actually 71st. So I put the orange for 5.5% and state average is the red, 5.9%. That's the way I decided to communicate it. Questions?
Good.
I'm sorry, Joe, go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Good,
I'm good.
okay.
Yep.
Same data really looked a little away. It's just that, how fast do you get up to a cum of 100%? And you could see that, you get up to 80% pretty fast right here with the first three quadrants. I just wanted to play a little bit with, with it. Okay, so you've got 80% of them in the three segments. I don't know. It's just another way of visualizing the material, I think. This started to get even more interesting, okay? Was, kind of fascinating to me, actually. So here's what, I'll just tell you what I saw, and you can tell me what you see. First of all, it only goes up through April 5th. The x-axis is the number, right? And, here's a good number, 40,000, right? March 1st, you don't see a lot of green, but you see, and here's March 15th, which is when the announcement came. So you can see the blue. And now you see the age groups. Now here's the thing that struck me, and I'll be interested in your comments. First thing, the blue is the biggest, 20 to 29. It was still big the next week, the 22nd. So big, those 2 weeks were the biggest, right?
Yeah.
But what I did see, though, was I was surprised how many 60s were in here. Even a lot of 70s. And remember, these are just numbers. These aren't how many over a base. So we don't know, it could be that from 60 to 69, that's half of the, whatever it might be. It might be a higher percentage than some other age group. But I saw, what this told me is this affecting all age groups. That's what I saw. That's why I called it comparable profiles across 5 decades of workers. All right, that's what I saw. Another way, whoops, doesn't seem to want to go for, here we go. Now, which industries are being affected? Well, no surprise, accommodation and food service, I call that hotel and restaurants, were the hardest hit by far. right? What surprised me at first was this other unknown thing. And I said, whoa, what's other unknown? Then came healthcare and social assistance, and then came retail. Neither of those two surprised me, but I was caught off guard by other unknown. And then I felt better about it, lots better about it, because a lot of people are doing what I think my younger people call the gig economy. And I think that they may be like the person next door, the grandson or in-law. He works for ESPN, but he's he's just a freelancer. And so I think that would be classified on other unknown, but that's the best I could do with the data that was presented. I did not take this chart. That's in the chart. It was sitting right there.
Jim, let me just cut in on the gig folks. I think they were not able to file for unemployment insurance until a little bit later in the process, in the beginning of April, because normally folks who work in the gig economy are not eligible for unemployment insurance. So I would not necessarily think that they're in the early numbers. They may be in some of the later statistics.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they just changed that. Sorry, Jim. I think they just changed that this week where self-employed couldn't do it, and independent contractors, but now they're going to be eligible. So that's going to be a late breaking news on that one.
Yeah, the PUAs, Kevin, you're right. The self-employed for the first time in history can file, and they weren't taking the information wasn't on the DOL website until April 30th, and the portal, I believe, wasn't exactly ready that day. So those people are going to add even more to these numbers, which is pretty scary.
That's right.
Okay, here's one other thing I will notice. You see that other unknown there? We're getting a little feedback. If you have noise in your house, maybe if you went on mute. You see the gray here, I'll call it, and this one, the gray and another color of orange for March and April. Whatever other unknown is, it's clearly the number one answer for those 2 weeks, because it's bigger than even restaurants. It's bigger than even these two. So for what it's worth, that's what I saw. Right? Any other comments on this one?
No, the scary thing is the healthcare and social assistance, when we need it most, are shut down.
Yeah.
I think there's a deep dive. I did not do this deep dive. This was sitting there, but I thought it was useful so that we know that inside each of these industries, you'll have a recategorization. And I thought this one was interesting because of this. And again, this data was sitting there. I might have done some packaging here, but regardless, right? So what I'll do is I'll say, let me just move this. On the left, on March 15th, what happened first? That just closed down.
Yeah.
Right? Daycares closed down. And then a whole bunch of physicians and practitioners, offices of other practitioners, and then individual and family services were almost as big. What happened in the second week, it seemed like the dentist closed down quicker than the physicians did, because the physicians was the number one answer. And then the daycare services continued to, and again, we only have 2 weeks, and it's in the hot weeks of the 15th was the first major wave of unemployment claims and filings, and this is the second week. So again, know that there's industry deep dives down that you can get to. I did not do any further, but I thought it was instructive, and others on the website, you can go and check it out if you so wish. Okay, that's what I had from the first analysis. The second one is
Jim, can I just jump? Jim?
Sure.
Can I just jump here? And I know I emailed you about it. The problem with this data is It doesn't include unemployment insurance claims in New York State, in Massachusetts, in Rhode Island, all of which are, where people who live in Connecticut may be working and filing claims. You file a claim not in the state that you live in, you file a claim in the state that you work in. So as I pointed out, there are people in Orange who are probably filing New York State unemployment insurance claims that are not counted.
So
because
that
of-
would be, Pat, that would go in reverse too, right? If I lived in Purchase, New York, but I worked in New Haven, Connecticut,
Right,
that would
right.
go in reverse, right?
Right.
But Pat's point is excellent, because I have people in the finance industry that take the train into Manhattan, not anymore,
Right.
but prior, and that's a good point. And they're down there and they're filing, and
Right.
there are a couple of them that are Orange residents. So there's a couple more to the 1,000+ number Jim has.
Yeah, I know when I go in on the train into New York in the morning, there are a lot of people who are heading into Grand Central. So a portion of those folks who come from Orange, Milford, are also unemployed and not counted.
So if I live in Orange, let's just say, so we have it, or any place in Connecticut, and I work in New York, I would file in New York.
Absolutely, yeah.
So to the extent that we spiked out the numbers in Orange, it could only be that they're higher.
Right.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
And probably we could estimate a percentage. We could do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
And Jim, I think you and I spoke. Well, I know we've spoken a lot last week.
Yeah, which time?
And the sad thing is not to make this horrible, but this is why, so people watching understand what this board has done and why we've had to make, the cuts we have on the town and the Orange Board of Education. And I'd like to, thank, Dr. Scarpetti and the OBOE for, working with us so hard. But before this started, we still had a 3 or 4% unemployment rate. So these are new claims, 21%. So add a percent, maybe for a few people working out of state, and then the original 3, we're at 25+. So the 1 out of 5 households might be 1 out of 4. And that's terrifying.
We have had that conversation, Kevin. Let me give you a new thought that I had when I was was walking down the beach earlier. Let me modify that, because you and I both said the same thing, right? Or I said it first, perhaps.
You said it first. You get the
So I'm
credit.
going to edit what I'm going to edit what I said for this reason. The 21%, and we'll get to that, right, is households. Unemployment rates, I think, is people, right?
Yeah.
So when we get to the 21, that's based on households, but unemployment rate is people. And again, it's not just the population. For example, I used the whole population for Orange when I got that 5.5%. I used the whole population for every town. Okay. So I don't know exactly how they do unemployment, but let's say you got to be over 18, I would assume. You might be over 21. I don't know, but they have rules on that. So that would mean it isn't households, but it's not the whole population either. So we'd have to do an analysis of that. Okay. I think earlier we were talking about it being additive, but it might be a little bit modified from that.
Right. You're right.
See my point? Yeah. I wish I had thought of that when I first came up with the idea. Okay, Joe, that's a V2. Keep it fair, would you, babe? I mean, okay. Second item. We spent a good deal of time as a team, and it was a great fun in a certain way, particularly when it was done. We gave our input to Amity. Maybe I should have put input to Amity. Okay. And here's what it looked like. You guys, we sent it to you as soon as we submitted it. It was a 4-page document. It was well laid out. I think it was very professional looking. It looked something like that. And there were 4 sections. We talked about proactive educational leadership. We talked about our perspective on the budget. We skipped down to item 4, and Pat, I think you took the major lead on this one initially, was questions about, hey, not only about next year's budget, how about this year's budget? And so we have a series of questions on that. And then we decided section 3, I called it perspectives on specifics. And we'll see what's in that section as well. And by the way, what you see in these slides is should be exactly the material that's in that Word document. All I did was copy it over and did some formatting. Let's go through so everybody can see what we presented or wish to present verbally to the Amity board. It was not 100% presented. We're presenting it now. This document, this proactive educational leadership, was based, as you can see by the asterisk up here, was based by interviews with ABOE and OBOE members, as well as Town of Orange leaders. I did that back in February to April of 2016. I'm not exactly remembering what was churning around back then. Probably had something to do with budget developments and whatever it was, but it was initially presented. These slides, or this slide, was initially presented at the town budget hearing back on that date in April of 2016. And the Amity superintendent, the Orange BOE superintendent, the first selectman and town leaders were both in the meeting, heard these presented, and got copies of the slides. The title was Government Services because although it's talking about educational leadership, you could say anything about anything in the state budgets. And frankly, it's what we do in industry. You know, we can't afford services or any work processes as we've done them in the past. I mean, that's just standard work in industry. You have to improve every year. We need to leverage new educational concepts and approaches. We're in danger of losing public support and voters. And I think some of the feedback that Amity got the other night from voters who, when they asked for feedback, says exactly that. Essentially, we need to bend the curve of the cost of the education. And that's a quote, frankly, it was from one of my interviews. I just wrote it down. And it was from an ABOE member. We need to have administrations that can find efficiencies to institute practical, effective responses to this clear challenge. That's what we need. We need administrations that can find efficiencies to bend the curve in the cost of education. In item 6, again, a quote from someone I interviewed, a different person. Adults should role model the real reality of our current societal situation. This wasn't a pandemic with 20% of our people filing, not back in 2016. So you can imagine what someone would say now, but we should role model the reality of our current societal situation and lead by example. And what do they mean by lead by example? Work with the resources you have and still do an excellent job. Working with more modest budgets will make our educational system stronger and a leader, accepting the governmental challenge while maintaining educational excellence. This is what I took from those many interviews, summarized them, called them proactive educational leadership, and I see no better time to resurface them than now. Questions, comments?
No, I remember that meeting vividly.
Okay.
Jim, were there any comments from the Amity, from the Orange contingent of the ABOE at all, or for all of our efforts here? I mean, what was their reaction?
They supported the budget at 2.49%, as you know.
Yeah.
You said it was unanimous, and I heard the same thing.
Yeah.
So,
Incredible.
well, I mean, if people in town, the name who people are on that, if they have a different opinion, fine. If they support them, they should support them. I mean, that's what makes our country. Let's have the discussion. Let's have the debate. I mean, that's what makes our country great. Okay, second section of the input to Amity. There are 2 pages. the first page said the following: the 2.49% increase is the same increase discussed back in, it was either late February, Joe, I thought it was February 24th, that Monday. We had the meeting over at the Orange Middle School, or it was maybe the early March one. I do not know, but I know it was 2.49%. I know Chris made the motion. I know that Jim Zioli went there and said he needed it to be 2%. I know Matt Giglietti at that first meeting said he could only support 2%. Regardless, that was prior to the effects of the economic shutdown, item 1. Item 2, after the effects of the economic shutdown, we just saw it in the data. It wasn't in the first week of March, right? Now we're shutting everything down. In April, the Amity administration proposed to raise the budget increase. We're getting some feedback. Thank you. Proposed to raise the budget increase to 2.73%. Okay. Since the economic shutdown started in mid-March, the town of Orange. Now remember, we create the budgets in the departments. We have our meeting in February, all-day meeting, and look over this budget. You know, what are we going to do? And we get another meeting, all right? And we start saying, hey, we think we could do this here, we could do this here, and we could do this here, and all that. And when we, even after all that, the town cut from the town budget. We got 3 budgets. We got Amity, the town, and Orange Board of Education. The town cut more than $740,000 more from its budget that was previously due 2 times in February. So, John, you remember, you and, let me see if I can get you on visually here. Yep, there you are. You were, oops. You cut, and Audrey reviewed, I think it was 63 line items, totaled 620, 25, and then you cut the more. And so now it's up to, whoops, sorry about that, team. You cut down 740,000 more from the budget. Similarly, since the economic shutdown started in mid-March, the Orange Board of Education's budget was reduced. It was 950,000 from what was presented on March 5th, but it wasn't totally a cost reduction, right, Kevin? Wasn't there something?
No, and 2 things. John recommended they found savings. We're the ones who took the action.
Right.
And yes, and on item 4 from the Board of Ed, it was just under $300,000 of that reduction was because they didn't have the calculation on the health insurance of the teachers and other employees' contribution towards the premium. So that
Their copay
was reduced by 950, but almost 300,000 of that was
copays.
was copays. Yes, thanks, John.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't want somebody looking at this saying that was the what we did not reduce that budget by that kind of money.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to keep it fair. And since the economic shutdown started in March, well, we now have more data. It's not 30+ million, it's 33.5 million. I saw an article today, have filed for unemployment, and I can share that article with you if you so desire. So that's the 5th thing we mentioned about the Amity budget. Moving on, you know, I saw this graphic and we put it into our 4-pager for Amity. I don't think you can emphasize enough more than this graphic what's happening in our country right now. This is the unemployment insurance claims by week since 2016. It looks like, I don't know what it looks like, Joe, but it looks like the Empire State Building over on the right. I know that. This is the U.S. Department of Labor. Okay, finishing off this section, we said since early March through April 20th, this was the first one. Remember now, this is over the weekend. We hadn't had the new data. So we showed them the data and we told them that how many residents in Connecticut had filed for unemployment and how many residents of Orange in item 7. And then we explained what this data meant in item 8, that in the last, from early March through the middle of April, 16% of the households in Orange have filed for unemployment. That equates to 6 households. And it was material like this that I believe we felt should be presented by us, not summarized by someone who thinks they know what we want for our input to be communicated. And finally, in terms of the budget, we made the following point number 9. Since the economic shutdown started in mid-March, educational institutions have implemented across the board pay cuts of at least ones that I know of 5 and 10% on salary staff. And I think there's more that are out there. So that was the second section of the document. It shouldn't have come as a big surprise to the team that we created it, but if someone wants to comment on section 2, this is the last of the slides on section 2.
No, Jim, to your last point, number 9, there actually was, and it's in the Amity minutes, a professor, doesn't say what university, but a local professor who said her pay was cut by 10%, along with the fact that the university in this interim period has stopped all retirement plan contributions on their employees' behalf too. So that, you know, that's a reality on that last statement, because we put that in there and then we find out from the comments from that things that were submitted to the Amity Board of Education before their meeting, that there was a person exactly in that situation from Woodbridge.
Yeah, we didn't know that at the time. Yeah, so that would mean whatever pay cut they get, Kev, it's actually higher. They got a pay cut and then they got a cut on their, you know, they went into retirement.
Yes, exactly.
Get a pay cut anyway, right? So, okay. All right, next section. You ready, team? Specific items. I'd like to emphasize that whoever came up with the introductory statements, I thank you. While it is not the job of the Orange Board of Finance to identify specific Amity budget reductions, here's a short list of items that might raise the eyebrows of economic shutdown weary taxpayers. Adding new staff, particularly new senior administrative staff position. The timing of a 1.5 million investment in new technology. Utilizing the fiscal 19-20 surplus and not returning that surplus to the taxpayers of the towns. Utilizing the fiscal 19-20 surplus. Now that was the surplus, Joe, we were talking about earlier. We went to find the right number in the minutes from the meeting for items that would have been required to be budgeted and was stated as such, by the way, and thus would have raised the current 2.49% budget. For example, a down payment on new technology, the $300,000 that we just talked about, or textbooks, audiovisuals, another $100,000. So as you can see, depending upon how you look at the 2.49, I look at it as you just told me, oh, whatever that 2.49% budget increase, you really should be adding 400,000 to it. That's what it says to me. But, you know, like the person who wrote the intro, it's not the job of us to identify specific things, but some things may caught our eyes. Those were some that were submitted by this team. That's the end of section 3. Okay. Now here's, whoops, I apologize, team. Here's the list of specific questions on this year's budget because they stopped being in school middle of March. And if they don't go to school and, well, say they go back June 1st, which I'm not sure they will, but that would be 2.5 months of not being in school. Where's the savings from having the schools closed? What is, Pat, I'm hearing your voice here a little bit.
Okay, you can.
You
can
want to walk
say-
us through a couple of these?
Sure. Actually, it all came from an initial question of a neighbor of mine who said, what are the savings from having the schools closed? And I just drilled down some other questions from that one. The first was, what's been purchased this year or encumbered and not used that can be applied in the 2021 budget year? In other words, giving the school some cost savings from the budget that was being proposed that has now been approved. What goods and services were not purchased that would result in savings? What can be deferred from the budget based upon the fact that we didn't use things, where there was less wear? What have we learned from the closing that impacts future budgets? Obviously we keep hearing that the world is going to be different. And we've had a couple of months of learning the difference in education. What can be applied that would impact future budgets, plus or minus, but I think it's a question that needs to be asked. Finishing it up, what's the anticipated dollar amount that's been saved and where are you putting it? And then, of course, we talked about earlier the new technology investment and any other pending contracts to look at renegotiating existing contracts. And a sense that I have that there are vendors at this point in time who were very hungry and who would come in with much lower bids. And I think it's incumbent on any public entity to see if they can come up with lower bids. And then I know, Jim, you added the last two questions.
Well, I'll pick up number 8. I think we can talk about number 9 as well, but I go over to Amity almost every morning to run Achilles heel if it will let me, and we run right through the parking lot. And I know there's a lower parking lot and an upper parking lot, but we run through both every day. And when we passed the bonding, remember it was in 2 parts last year, a little over 3.2 for the first part, 3.1 for the second part. And Kevin, correct me, but I think both bond things passed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, they did.
And Kevin Moffett, I believe the first bond had the football field in it, right?
Correct.
And it also had the track, which I was surprised.
Yep.
Right? But in that first one, I believe it was the first one, was over 600, I think it was $625,000 for repaving the parking lot. I was stunned by that when I actually, I should have done more homework, but I mean, I'm doing what I can do. And so I asked, can we defer or revisit some of the part of the bonding past last December, because I don't think we needed a parking lot. I don't think we needed it then, and we sure as heck don't need it now. So that was me. Now, number 9, I don't know if it's your voice, PJ, or not, but if it isn't, I apologize, but I want to make sure you can get to weigh in if you would like to about item number 9 down there, but I may have the wrong dude.
No, that was me. I mean, I think from, this year's budget, we are where we are. I think this was a very difficult budget as we stressed a few times. I don't know about you guys, but this is not what I signed up for. When I ran for Board of Finance, and I've shared several times everything I'm concerned about for next year with the economy. And I think we've been prudent with this budget. We need to continue to be prudent. And I don't know if putting people on notice is the proper term, but next year could be much more difficult than this year. And we need to make people aware of that. So I think we need to let people know that next year may not be business as usual. Next year may be really ugly with all the things I outlined, people being laid off, taking furloughs. These could be examples of the reality of next year. Now we're all hopeful, right, for a better future, for everything to kind of work its way through, for the virus to continue on its downward slope, hopefully, and we could come out of this thing in much better shape. But I think our job isn't to hope, it's to prepare, and I think we need to do that.
Now, PJ, none of us signed up for this, but I'm glad we're here. Because we care, and your insights and your knowledge and everything else. I think this whole board I put us up against any board of finance in the state of Connecticut or in New England or anywhere because of our diligence, our hard work, making decisions that truly sometimes we don't want to do, but we have to for our residents, whether they like us or despise us for it. But no, we had started this year, we had grand list growth. Stock market was doing pretty well. Everything was good. And within 2 weeks, everything was vaporized. And, I'm sure you have clients, I have clients that had talked to me back in January, low 60s, mid 60s, talked about retiring, and that's off the table now because of everything that's going on. And it's just, but as Jim always says,
It changed a lot of lives.
He says team. And I think, I don't think there's 6 people or 6, including myself, that I'm very proud of for the work we do for the town of Orange. And I hope other people appreciate it because it's been gut wrenching. It really has. And Jim's done a ton of work and everything. So I'll hand this back to him.
Is this Zoom group hug time?
Yes, it is. No, but everyone's background, everything they brought to the table, and you couldn't, nobody could foresee this, but we didn't foresee 2008. Although I think you and I probably did, just because of the industries we're in, with what we were seeing people doing. But this is a whole nother ball game.
Right.
That.
Unlike 08, though, this was an unforeseen entity. This is a virus that we're trying to protect people, and we're not going to know if we did the right thing or not for 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Hopefully we did, and hopefully things get better sooner rather than later.
Within 6 and 7 o'clock tonight, I found out about the 33.5 million on nationally claims versus the 30. It also started talking about the likelihood, the probability of people receiving their jobs back.
Yeah.
It's not anywhere close to 100%. And we're not talking about how long, we come out of the dip or how big a dip. That's the economy, right? But there will possibly be even in education. Bending the curve in the cost of education, someone may come up with a way to lower that cost of education. But in industries, that is sure going to be happening. And that's what the article says. So I will mention, and I just don't want to make it personal, but I will say this is our challenge. And you see it every time you get an email from me. It's a quote from my father. It's easy to be at your best when things are going well. This is a very good test for all of us, period. I'll go forward if we wish to. Okay. Now we're in the home stretch. The next section is, okay, so Kevin gives me more homework. So
you're retired, Jim. We could give you homework.
Yeah, thank you. And it's the same as before. Only now the claims have gone up on the summary page. You saw the number. We'll revisit it now. 9 weeks. In Orange, it was over 1,000, approaching 300,000 for the state. Now I was able, and I sent you guys this the other day as a graphic And now what I want to do is I want to say that we wanted to compare the 7 weeks versus the 9 weeks. So I set up the sheet so you could see if you're watching at home or even our team now. You can see the April to 1st set of data that went through 7 weeks. The red means it was not complete per the Connecticut Department of Labor. You can see that down here, they have now established that the last 4 weeks are not complete, and we'll talk about that in a second. You can see the orange 772. You can see the orange going up to 1,010. You can see the state of Connecticut numbers right there. Okay, but the questions we really were asking are over here on the left, and we're going to have more slides to do this, which will help guide the eyes. What has changed in the period between 7 weeks and 9 weeks? Did the data change in prior weeks? And what about the new weeks themselves? And we assessed the changes both from the state and for Orange on the increases that change, how much, the percentage increases, and also take a stab at the number of households. And I want to communicate to this team, all right, how I went about that, because we had to make some assumptions. So without further ado, I'll just go through the slides as we have them. First, the increases. The state, as you can see over here on the right, where I've highlighted this thing, 69,864 was the number of increase, and it was up 31%. So too, in Orange, it went up 238, and amazing enough, it went up 31% as well. Okay, so there was the data of amount of increases. All right. When you get into the changes themselves, let's walk it through and make sure the eyes can see what's there. Percentage increases. So you can see for Orange, where you were 4 up here and 4 here, you didn't go up at all. So no increase. Whereas if you were in March 22nd, we went up a little bit from 218 to 241, 23. We went up 11% on that 218 base. So what you see, it makes logical sense, that as you go further out, there should not be as much change in the earlier months, or weeks actually now. Now, when you get out to April 5th, now they had alerted us over here that they didn't have all the data in those 3 weeks. So not surprisingly, you're starting to see bigger increases, 77% increase in April 5th, more than double from 31 to 74 in April 12th. And we didn't have any over here, so this was all new. But this might tell you that what will happen to these will be kind of similar to what happened over here when you go out a couple more weeks on data we will get in the future. Maybe not. We hope not. Similarly for the state, you can see their percentage increases. Very low, 10%, 25, etc. Okay? So that was the changes and the percent increases. In terms of the methodology team, I've sent you this Excel file, tab 2, I think it's 2A, has this chart. But I just want to make sure you guys are comfortable playing with it, or you can ask me offline. But any quick questions, I'll be happy to answer. Hearing none, we'll go to the households. Here it got a little tricky. Not the number was 1,010, we know that. But I needed a base. So Kevin found for me households in Orange of 2014. Okay, so it's 6 years ago. I had to have a number.
Fuck you.
All right. Whoa. We're getting a little feedback. So, so what we got, here is the number, 4841, Orange households. So all we did is take that number wherever it is and divide by 4841, and you could see it rises. Now for the state. Now this gets into where I got the population data, which I mentioned earlier was 2018, the latest I could get, where I got all the towns, the cities in the state actually as well. In that population, there's the number that said it was 35,72,666. Okay. So I'm saying to myself, how do I get a state of Connecticut household percentage? I need a base. So I said, well, if Orange's households were using 4841 from here, from 2014, as a percentage of the total population is 34.7. Okay? So not knowing any more about what the number of households were in the state, I decided to use 34.7, and I backed into this number 12, whatever it is there, 39982. And so I put it there. Am I being clear on the methodology, team? Please educate me if I'm not.
Very clear.
Thank you. So I took this 2,000, I divided by that, and that's where I get this number. And then I just copied and pasted the baby, and that's where you get the 23.9, 1 in 4. 1 in 4 households in the state have filed an unemployment claim after 9 weeks with incomplete data for the last 4 weeks, and the future is the future. That's the data. Okay, data's great, pictures are better. Pictures make it a little easier to see. So here's the orange data graphically. 2 cuts at it, blue. That was when we took it at April 12th. The red was when the second phase that we just went through, April 26th. You can see that it didn't change in the early weeks, and it was small. Didn't change much here, went up a little, went up a little. It's the same data as the other chart. More than doubled, more than doubled. And how you read these, so I called it reading the chart to make, say somebody else gets this chart, give them a shot at it. Initial claims for the week of April 12th rose 31 to 72, an increase of 77%. Whoa. That actually should say, this is a violation, Joe.
74.
74.
No, I think it should be, well, I'll put it up so you can see it because this is not helping you see it. April 12th is 139%.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what it is? I think I changed it on an earlier version, but I don't know how to save it because I made this, I corrected this on the last time I went through this. Talk about it. It's 2 violations in 1 and you guys didn't know. Sorry about that, team. Obviously I can do better. But that's how you read the chart, okay? That's how you read the chart. Okay. So next chart, state of Connecticut, same idea. All right, bigger numbers, similar kind of bell curve. You can see the percentage increase by the weeks. You can see the data since March 29th. After March 29th, these 4 weeks are in what the Department of Labor are calling incomplete. And you can see that the 7,808 going to 18,931 is an increase of 42% right there. Okay. I see what happened. If you wanted to do it another way, this is the same orange graph. For orange, 1 in 5 households, you see orange in the blue and you see the state in the red. So for orange, it's over 20%. So it's more than 1 in 5 households have filed. For Connecticut, it's a little under 1 in 4. So about 1 in 4. I only had a little space there. So I decided to write it that way. So that's that. You also can do it graphically. I think the other one, I think the one I just showed you was better. This is the same data. Only looking at bar charts, but if nothing else, the other one gave you kind of a visual difference look. So that's the data we have. That's the town must be feeling. And now I'll just leave it open to make sure if anybody has any comments on the data of that whole section, which really 2 sections now of the 3. We'll give the team a chance to comment.
Yeah, the only thing that I started to think about is in looking at households, which is probably the only way you can look at it. There are households in orange where 2 people have filed for unemployment insurance, who are in far more critical shape than a household in which one person is getting a wage and one person is filed for unemployment insurance. There's no way to massage it out, but I think we have to recognize the fact that there are households that there is absolutely no income coming into aside from waiting for that unemployment insurance check at this point in time.
Well, I think there's a lot of different types of things out there, but I think what this graph is saying and that graph is there's a lot of angst out there, and it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
No, and to Pat's point, you take it further, and I'm not picking on her, so Pat, forgive me, but part of those households are retirement communities.
Yes.
So in that statistic is that we're including, because it's all households in orange,
Yeah.
our homes were, hopefully no one's working because they're retired and don't have to still work in those years. So no, there's a lot of data, and it's
hard to cut it, slice it in other than a macro way.
Right. So it's within this environment that we're looking at budgets for next year.
Let me just make one other point, and that is there was a headline, I think it was yesterday, that 1 in 5 families say that their children do not have enough food for the day. And that, to me, when we're talking about education, that's really a significant issue and a significant problem.
And I think, Pat, if you look, a lot of kids are participating in the food program through the schools.
Yeah, I
And
know.
that's probably reflected there. One thing I'd like to, I'm looking ahead, Jim, at your other slides, and I don't see it here. And I talked to John Cifarelli about this during the week. One thing that we're going to want to pay close attention to is the revenue in July. How is that relative to last year and previous years? So, I mean, obviously we get it. There's a big unemployment concern right now. Unemployment means less income. Less income means less tax revenue.
Right.
So let's, continue to prepare for that by looking at the revenue numbers as they come out.
Yeah, probably we will not be taking July and August off for this year for our meetings, or we find alternative ways such as this, where, reasonably easy. I mean, for us to keep.
We probably want to have one of those meetings just to, like I said, check in on the revenue side.
Yep.
No, and PJ, I was going to hold this till later, but since you brought it up, and John can yell at me for smoking, I don't get. Anyway,
You just announced it.
people have, people have asked about our fund balance. We have a great fund balance, and it's, I'm sure all of us have been hit with this. We have a rainy day fund. Why don't we use it? Well, we don't know how much of it we're using. The state of Connecticut, the legislature has been adjourned, so they're not back in. We do not know what the governor's going to do. We know there's record low sales tax. We know there's record high unemployment. There's probably going to be record low income tax collections this year, obviously. So our 1.2 or 1.3 ECS might be zero.
Yeah.
So we might be using 1.3 million of our fund balance just on that we're not aware of at this moment. And we have to go by what was in the prior budget. We don't have to, but this isn't the year to say, hey, it's going to be zero. Let's add $1.3 million to the taxpayers and have them pay it. We don't know what we're using a fund balance. We're not going to know, but it's not zero to anybody who's watching and concerned about that. We don't know what ECS is going to be. We don't know what our collections are going to be. We don't know what our building permits are going to be. And those, as we spoke our last meeting, we all agreed not to adjust those revenue numbers, because to adjust them and try to predict the future would mean a tax burden on the residents of Orange. And we're luckily in a position that we can afford that for the next year. We don't, going past that, probably the answer is no. But in the short term, we're okay there if we do take a hit. So for anybody who's saying we have a fund balance, you should be using it. We probably are a lot, but we just don't know how much at this point.
Kevin, I think maybe some of the, this is great conversation. This is superior conversation. I think, I like to have commentary on when we're looking at materials that we're deciding, but this is just commentary to not have right now. The only thing I think you used the word a second ago is luckily there's no luck involved in us having this fund balance. We worked hard. We've worked hard over the years by passing to have it at a certain size, which we did not at that point in time, if you remember.
Yes, you're correct.
And I think you'll remember back, and maybe before you, PJ, certainly before you, Pat. I don't know about you, Joe. But we've worked hard, and doing more with less doesn't mean, oh, we got a bunch of money, so we can. No, it means we keep the kitty in the kitty, and we bits of that, and we've all seen the slide, the AAA credit rating slide. But I think you're right, and we'll see what the future brings. But what you're talking about is a lot of risk factors, significant unknowns in the future on the revenue side, and budgets typically mean you're lending yourself pretty much into a fixed 12-month expenditure unless changes are made in mid-year, which is less than usually likely. Hey, we're going to get to that. If you're still watching, whoops. I don't know. Okay, I want to just kind of get to the 3 slides that we typically show at the, what are we doing? Because there's a unbelievably good news story here. But I just wanted to mention that there's a process by which we go to economic development. In the last 2 years, we've created slides that look like this. This is the slide that I created, I think it was late March, or it certainly doesn't, there may be changes. Somebody's, walked out on something, I don't know. But as you can see, there are 6 phases from this slide. And where a particular Homewood Suites back 2 years ago was approved and it was constructing, and last year was still in process, and now it's open for business. And it has a certain monetary value. Bull Hill Lane, Urban Air, the U-Haul Regional Pub, that's open. Home Depot, it got sold, and obviously it was never closed, but Planet Fitness is now in there. Trailer Park, we had it on, it's still for sale. The Smith Farm Road, still the same thing. The Earth Materials site, they now have a construction aggregate store over there that's owned and operating. So pretty much there's been some modifications since last year, April, so that you can see the change between April 19 and April 20. All right, what's been going on? There's 3 pages. Here's the second page. The assisted living, that big thing on Indian River Road that you see being constructed up on the hill there, it's been approved, and it's a significant value operation going on there. The VA outpatient thing on Edison Road, it's being fitted out, okay? The commercial ink manufacturing is up and running. You can see the shipping hub that's up in the old Stu's property there. It's under construction. You've seen the activity and all the evergreen trees and the fence there. I called it highly active construction, right? Continuous building activity through the mild winter. Marsh Hill, there is a warehouse facility going up there of 30,000 square feet. It's in phase 5 plus. And the redevelopment project on Firelight, 1 is complete. The liquor store and the children's therapy might be open and operating, and then that potential mixed use thing, and that's a whole nother issue. So I called it part of it is 3 and part of it is 6. 3/6. Final page. Lowe's and Sam's under discussion for reuse, leave it at that. Marsh Hill, the Salami Lane properties, it was sold, potential equipment business. Of course, in this environment, who knows, there might be a lot of things up for grabs. In the former bedding barn, the property was sold for $1 million. It's being refit for a new user. So I just added up the column and, you know, for what it's worth. So economic development is a significant item. I don't want to get into the point that, John, I'm sure you're going to make in looking at the revenue numbers and the mill rate for next year and that sort of thing. But the concept for the audience is this. When you increase your grand list, that means that you have increased your assets in the town. When you spend money on a new budget, let's just say you spend $2 million on over last year. To the extent you get more assets in your town in the current mill rate, that pays for some of the $2 million. And what pays for the rest of it, if it doesn't cover $2 million, is increase in taxes. So 2 prongs: control what you're spending, increase your economic activity, increase your asset base. Because you increase your asset base, you get more money, and hopefully it can cover your increases in the budget or minimize the increases for which there would be increased taxes. That's what I have, team, for so far. Kevin, any questions? Because this is the last one for me. I'm going to stop sharing. All good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Let me
Thanks,
stop.
Jim.
Very much.
Thank you.
This was amazing, as I said. Thank you.
You're welcome, Pat.
All right, before we jump into item 6, and I you know, Amity did what they did. I don't want to, you know, belabor points up there or anything. But the interesting thing that I just have to bring up, because it's a pet peeve of mine, is somebody, and I forwarded everybody the minutes, is some of the comments in the group think that we might have out there that we're gonna have to deal with in this economic shutdown is, you know, one gentleman, his comment was, first, can we please stop giving back money to the towns every year and instead trust the professionals that know how to run things? If we have a surplus, we should reinvest it in educational priorities or sock it away in a rainy day fund. Kickbacks from Amity should not be an annual and relied upon cash cow for the towns. I take offense to that because, to me, if they're running a budget, and this gentleman, hopefully he's watching, and he knows me personally, they're not kickbacks to the town. You overtaxed our residents. That's what you did. So you don't get to keep it. It's the residents of the town of Orange, the town of Bethany, the town of Woodbridge. If your budget was under by $2 million and you sent $1 million back, it's, you know, the professionals you're trusting, you know, enough said there. So that just was an issue that bothered me. Other than that, you know, the people that talked about saving and everything else, but they're returning the surplus. We do not look at Amity as a cash cow by any stretch of the imagination. We look and we analyze their budgets. And another issue is Joe, and it's not for tonight, but the January 13th budget, they had their capital plan for technology had a dollar amount. Their budget on April 20th, the latest one that was passed, had a capital budget, and you can look at, I think it's on page 71 and 72. And then they used $300,000 from this year to pay. But that 5-year plan, there's no $300,000 reduction. I think we actually look at their budget more than they do. So to me, at your next finance committee meeting, there's a $300,000 hole, because
That's the one we talked about the other night, right, Kevin?
Yeah, they never lowered that number in any of the 5 years. Now they took 300 out of the current year surplus and applied it to year 1 on that contract. So I would think that, and it's all in there, page 71 in one year, page 72 in the other, that one of those years, 300 should have come off from the total, and it never did. So that's, we don't use the word slush fund, but they're to me, there's just something wrong with the math. In Leahy speak. Right, Jim?
Well, can I show you another Leahy speak? Because I know you guys have seen it, but if we have an audience tonight, I'd like them to see it. So could I take 2 more minutes?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Why stop now?
Thank you.
What's that?
I said,
Why
why
stop
stop?
now? No, but it's, you know,
Okay.
this impacts our residents in Orange a lot.
I'm joking.
This is information that before Amity came over, I asked them for 4 things. Over the last 11 years, tell me what your budgets were, tell me what your surpluses were, tell me your students, tell me FTEs, full-time equivalents. This came, as you can see at the bottom of the page, from February 13th. Amity leadership has seen it. Anybody watching back then has seen it. We've talked about it in a couple of our meetings. We're talking about it now. And we're talking about it now in light of the comment that gentleman said, and I'll be exactly as if I was talking to Kevin and him because Kevin referenced him. There's the data. Probably had all the data. I didn't want to look it up. What I did is I sent them a blank Excel file that looked exactly like this with nothing in it. And that day they sent me back the information. Thank you. What this told me is that in this time period, there's 2010, you can see that this number of students have gone down 14%. That's not known as 1 in 7. You used to have 7, now you have 6. However, during that same time period, we can see the number of full-time equivalents. It's gone up by 4%. You can also see that if you divide the two, that there is a 16% decrease in the number of students per full-time equivalent. You can also see that there's percentage budget increases. And now here's where it gets very interesting. So if you're watching at home, this is key. Oh, look at the low increases over the last 5 years. The average is 2.38. Okay? Keep that thought in mind. The surplus, getting a little feedback. The surplus, as you can see over the years, we didn't have the surplus yet for this current fiscal year, has markedly risen to Hey, somebody, we're on, could you go on mute if you have noise?
It's not me. I'm the only one in a 55,000 square foot building.
It was me.
We need the cat back.
We're done.
$3 million surplus, $2 million surplus, $1.8 million surplus. Now, someone is calling this cash cow. Think about this a little deeper than that. Average, by the way, 1,389,422. This is the chart we ought to talk about. What you have here, and I want everybody in town to think about what this is saying. The blue is the increase in the budget in Amity in a particular year from the prior year. The gold is the surplus you have at the end of that year. And we're going to focus on, I'll focus on all of them. I just happen to be looking at 15, 16. So I'll just, we'll just, put a spotlight on it right here. So what does this mean, really? Let's talk about this. It means that you asked for an increase of 933,357. Probably Joe, me, Kevin, Jimmy Zioli, everybody were saying, can you damper it down a bit? Oh, can't do that. just like we're getting comments here today, need that pre-pandemic driveway. And yet, at the end of the year, we didn't need 1,793,500 of the budget. And the increase for the prior year's budget was only 933. Let me tell you what this means. It means that if we had not given you any increase, you would have had $860,000 surplus even then. Can you, so here, imagine this. We don't need any increase for 2016, 2017. Imagine what people would have said. But not only would you not needed that increase, you would have had a surplus of the difference between these two. Now, let's take a peek. In the last 10 years, this has happened every single time, except for this 1 year where it was slightly less than the increase. But we still had a surplus of 48,029. This has not been happening once. This has been happening habitually. Structural budgeting issues. That's what we're talking about. Another thing, final point. You talk about an increase of the budget, you're talking about something from budget to budget. Example, in this particular year, 17-18, going to 18-19, you can say that I'm at 48.4 million and I'm going to 49, and that's only 1.2%. Remember those percents were real low? Well, let's think about that. When you have a $3.2 million surplus, that means your increase is not $587,000. It's 587 plus the 3.2 million. So you actually have an 8.2% increase. Pretty good to live on, I would think. And the same thing's been going on. So what we need to think about is not just budget to budget, so actuals to budget. So guess what? I did the calculation. And you can see in blue is the budget to budget increases, which I told you earlier were 2.38%, and you can see them. And here's all those little budget increases. But the actual to budget increases is more than double that. And the actual is what you spent last year. So the budget that you have this year to spend is really what the increase is in a high surplus environment. And that's what's wrong with the comment from the teacher at Amity, who very articulately did it, but I don't think he was aware of this data. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I don't think I named him as a teacher, but you, but you're correct. And had they done what he suggested,
Good guy. I like the guy.
Yeah, they would have had. They'd be sitting on $10 to $20 million in a surplus fund right now. Which would be, you know,
And he's a great teacher, by the way.
Yes, he's a great guy. He's just, you know, he has a different opinion on things. Okay, so we'll move on from that, and now we will get to our item number 6, budget workshop. Discussion of 2020-2021 budget and possible vote to approve to a hearing. I think, is John still with us and awake, or did we put him to sleep?
No, I'm still here.
So we have our final sheets, I believe.
Yep.
Yes, you do.
And
I've placed in all your changes from the last meeting. I've gone over it to make sure everything seems to tie out. My staff has also done that with me, and this, if
and John, you know, again, PJ's gonna yell at me for a group hug, but you and Audrey, I know you've been at town hall every day, and I know how hard you worked, and we are lucky to have you as our finance director.
Thank you.
Agreed.
It has been a tough year between the budget and the virus, and we're at Munis training every other week, and we've had to postpone a little bit and cut back, and we've had a few people off. So it has been a trying year so far, but we're here and we're on.
I know you're there. Every time I call, you're at town hall.
Yeah. So
I think
anyways,
the citizens of Orange should know that.
No, John said-
Absolutely.
all right, I just assume get back to the budget then.
Okay, sorry. You're shy.
I have one thought before we proceed. Maybe since this is such a unique budget year procedurally, maybe we could quickly explain what we're doing. So we're talking about voting on something.
Okay.
What are the next steps?
Okay, why don't I do that first then? I've spoken to town attorney this week, and we went over the procedure that we wanted to follow as a board, and he agreed with it, and with one little difference. He said that Kevin and you and Mr. Zioli could do a change if we wanted to, and I'll explain that. What we're going to do tonight is, if you so agree, we're going to vote to pass this budget on to a budget hearing on May 18th, which is normally your next regularly scheduled meeting. But we'll post it at 7 o'clock as a budget hearing. And you'll give a short presentation of the budget. We're going to give residents, they'll be on OGAT. We'll be doing it by Zoom, obviously, again. We'll give residents either a time during that day by noon to send their questions, or we could do like we did tonight. We could do it 15 minutes into the meeting and give them that time to ask questions. Then after we're done with the budget hearing, half hour, whatever it takes, we're going to adjourn the budget hearing to a special meeting to then vote to pass the budget and pass the mill rate. And then after that, we're done. That budget will go into effect for the year. You'll be the Wednesday night, the Board of Selectmen will be passing a resolution giving you that authorization.
So John, what has changed since the last time we talked about this, or is it basically the same?
It's basically the same.
Thank you.
Basically the same. This year, you're acting as the last word on the budget, where in previous years, it's a referendum.
Similar to what happened with Amity.
Similar. Only I personally, I think you should take the questions into the meeting that night, but that's my opinion. You as a board could decide that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Yeah,
What Amity did, they decided that it had to be in by noontime or it doesn't count.
right. You know what, I feel the
everybody else-
residents should have that option, you know. But that's
Unlike them, Jim, we will answer the questions that people send us.
Yes.
We will not refer them to our website or OGAT tapes. We will answer our residents' concerns and questions.
Compared to what, Amity? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Yes. Hey,
And if-
speaking
and
of
if-
which,
And if residents want to send their questions in earlier, that's fine too. I'll distribute them to all you members and we can answer them that night also. I mean, they don't have to wait till that night to do it. They can do it earlier.
okay, so let me
post-
take control
And
of
we
the
can
screen
answer them,
here.
John, and to your point, we can answer them in the meantime personally with an email, but we will read them into the record, as
Right.
if they were at the podium, public speaking at our budget hearing.
Right. If you pass this budget tonight, I plan on having the full budget up on the town website Monday morning, sometime Monday. So residents will be able to look at it then. They'll be able to print it from home then.
Hey, John,
That's about
I-
it.
I
Now,
just,
John, did we have anybody tonight email us? Because I said 15 minutes and then we didn't talk.
No, we didn't. Not
Okay.
tonight.
okay. So we don't, I can stop sharing that, I guess.
I
I also
will
could-
also on the agenda that we post, I'll put my email address there. So if they want to do it earlier, they'll be, and I'll add the OGAT channel, and I've gotten a YouTube channel now also that OGAT broadcasts live on. That'll all be on there.
And then I saw an email from Saul Silverstein that I did not realize we were also, excuse me, broadcast on Frontier.
I'll put that on also. I didn't know that myself, but I'll try and cover them all for us.
So yeah, that was good information from Saul.
And I
What are
will
your
run the agenda by the town attorney before we do post it.
What are your thoughts about putting in some sort of verbiage regarding the potential for all the things we discussed in next year's budget? You know, layoffs, furloughs.
In my letter that's in the front, I'll mention some of that. Maybe not specifically, but that we're coming up on a hard year, that it's going to be a tough year for the state of Connecticut to fund the towns and cities because of the problem with the pandemic and all that. I will have something in there about that.
And I agree with
the
BJ.
federal government.
I think our next meetings, and since we have advance notice, we're just finishing this budget, and the next budget's going to start basically next week. Whether it be boards of education, municipal contracts or something, we need to start, talking to people sooner rather than later about whether it be pay freezes or anything else, because we don't know where this is going to come out. And
well, I'm thinking more along the lines of preparing people. I mean, this is Orange. I have a daughter at Peck and I have a daughter at Amity. I know these people, I know these teachers. We go to town hall. We know these people. These are real people that we can be talking about having significant effects for next year. And if things don't improve significantly, we're going to be forced with very difficult and unfortunate decisions. So my thinking is we prepare people for what may be down the line.
And you've already started it in this budget. You've eliminated 2.5 positions in this budget, along with the 2 positions that we've reevaluated the duties there and spread them off to other people and eliminated those. So we have 5.5 positions, I believe, in this budget that weren't in the last one.
Okay.
and that's in the town of Orange, but John, I think, it's Amity and the OBOE where there's contracts and increases and step increases where, the reality is if we don't come out of this on the right side of things, granted there's a contract, granted there's wage increases, so either they're going to have to negotiate, there's no wage increase, there's an actual decrease, or I hate to say it, but we have to be honest, there's a loss of body count. There's
right.
That's
well, don't forget, Kevin, that will be up to them on how
correct. It would be absolutely up to them. But and I remember in 2008, I have a teacher client in Bridgeport who's been there for over 30 years. And she's like, I don't need my raise. I don't want anything. But the majority of people, unfortunately, were greedy and voted to, in the union there, that they were not going to accept a freeze or a cut. And so a lot of people lost their jobs, and that's going to be up to them. But that's the reality going forward, unfortunately. And hopefully it's not. Hopefully we come out of this, but we can't assume, we can't have rose-colored glasses in this situation right now.
I totally agree with you, Kevin. I just wanted to make sure that people understand it's already started on the town side.
Oh, they absolutely.
That two people are gonna lose, 2.5 people are gonna lose their job come July 1st in the town hall. So,
And that's why I said at the beginning of this meeting, we've made decisions, we didn't want to make, but we
Right.
had to. And
Right.
we, this board and, PJ with his, group hug. Because that's what we have to do. We don't want to do this.
right,
And we're charged with this, you're charged with this. We have a responsibility to the citizens of this town. And I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I'll pat the 5 of you on the back. I don't think they could have 5 better people in charge of this.
Well, I'll pat you in the back. I think if we have 5 best people, we get the best leader. I know that. So
I was going to say,
so good. That's our opinion, or my opinion.
I was going to say, despite you, but Jim said.
Yeah, that was back when
We all have
restaurants were
nervous
open.
stress and nervous laughter, but this is, like, and
Yeah.
PJ, you said it, you didn't bargain for this, but your input, your hard work, it's everybody. This is just, it's just sad.
It is, but again, hopefully it gets better. Hopefully we all get healthy and we move on, and we can reflect back on this like other things that have happened.
I hope you're right, and I agree. And again, since John has these budget numbers, and I believe, John, our mill rate increase is 0.15.
give me a second.
And I want to again thank the Orange Board of Education and Dr. Scarpetti and that whole board, because
Yes, it is, John, Kevin.
0.15.
we pushed things
0.15.
on them, and they came through, and they always come through. 21 years I've been here, we push things on them, and unfortunately they I have the ringing of a former chairman in my head, who's an attorney and a great resident of Orange, but he spoke at Peck Place, not to pick on Amity anymore, but he said, every dollar you take, we don't get. And he was actually, he couldn't have been more factual or clear. And that's the situation that happened this year again. Although, had they cut their budget, I don't know if we would have been able to, we wouldn't have shifted money. We would have just tried to save the residents of Orange money, I think. But since that's an unknown, there's no reason to go into that. So we're at 0.15.
You're at 0.15, or it's a 0.0046% increase, which, Jim, I think on your average house in town is about $40 a year, if I'm correct, somewhere around there.
And unfortunately, it's not zero or negative.
Correct.
Right.
That's really where we're trying to get to. And I just happened to increasing. I do have a chart that we've seen before. Remember our bottom line chart?
Jim, when you're looking for that, when was the last time? I feel like it was pretty recently. When was the last time that we did the house assessments over again?
This is the 3rd year,
And we do it again when, John?
every 5th year.
Okay, so again, just because we're in this environment, if things continue to get progressively worse and unemployment continues to stay where it is, and people are forced to sell their houses, there's now a glut of houses on the market, housing prices are going to drop. Would we reassess at that point? I think we did after the credit crisis, didn't we?
After what happened when the recession hit in 2008, 2009, we were on the 2nd year of a 5-year phase-in.
Right.
And what happened was the state allowed the cities and towns to freeze the phase-in at that year. And that's what I think the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance had a vote together to do that. And I
Yes.
believe we had a joint meeting, right?
We
Kevin, I
did.
think you and I were still on it, maybe Jim also at the
Yeah,
time.
I remember creating the graphics.
Yeah, I think, John, you were on the Board of Finance. I think Kevin was on the Board of Finance.
Right.
Yep.
Jim.
Yep.
And the scary thing is, PJ, to your point, is we had a residential shift back then where commercial property was devalued after the market crash. And guess what? That's exactly what we might be looking at now, where
That's the point I was
small
gonna make.
businesses, restaurants, and and that could be shifted right over to the homeowners, regardless of their home value decline. It's going to be less than the commercial property decline, and that's
right.
that
That would make it
that's another worrisome.
not
factor.
want
Yeah,
to do
just
that.
another consideration for us, right?
Yep.
Well, but the pie still has to be divided, whatever. I mean, even if every house is valued at $1,
Yeah.
still have to divide the pie of the expenditures. So the only difference with reval is if there's a relative difference between homes, or if there's a difference between commercial and residential, as Kevin had said.
And that unfortunately is what happened to us in 08, where the
Well, no,
commercial
the
district-
reevaluation affects the grand list, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we have a mill rate, but what happened in 08 was the commercial property went down so much that the homeowners had a tax increase even at a zero budget because of the way it
Right.
played out.
Yeah.
And that can happen again where, people who aren't working could theoretically have, a $200-300 tax increase at a zero budget, and the commercial property owners get a decrease.
Yeah.
We don't, that's getting ahead, but that's absolutely got to be in our thought process. And again, with what you said, and and with Kevin and Jim and Pat and everybody here, that's why I said I think we're the best Board of Finance in the state of Connecticut. We think about those things.
Yeah.
And John, so.
Hey, Kev. Let me just flash up one thing, if with your permission. I created a bottom line up front slide. Remember that?
Absolutely.
I don't.
Is it about Amity?
Tell me if you guys can see it.
Yep.
Okay, so three parts to our budget, same silly graphics that we've used. But what's important to note here, here's the data. There's a 1.64 increase in the grand list, huge increase. Okay, we can talk about why. Overall, 2.21% increase in the entire budget, which includes our part of the Amity budget, which is 50% basically of Amity. And so this is going to result in a little under a 0.5% increase for a residential tax increase. Now, the important thing for us to, that's the net. So that's point number one, the little under the 0.46, or excuse me, a little under half, 0.46, and whatever that translates into. Whatever you paid in taxes this year, take 1%, move the decimal 2 over and take half of it. That's where you are. So the important thing going forward is we don't have this 1.64 increase in grand list. Then that number right over here is going to be 2.21. All right. I mean, I remember the introduction of the movie Raising Arizona, when the guy says to the guy who's holding up, the tow truck guy goes to the thugs that are trying to rob the guy with the broken down car. He says, if I didn't have this gun, would we have it? Would you be talking to me? And the tow truck driver looks at him and says, you really want me to answer? You don't have this gun? We ain't having this conversation. If we don't have this grand list increase, all of this spending increase goes right over here. So that's the important thing for everybody in town to know. Peace.
And I think, Jim, to your point is, if we didn't have the grand list increase in this environment, we could not raise taxes 2.21%.
Correct.
And we have no control of 1/3 of our budget was approved by a board. And I still, and I'm not political, not in this environment, that's for damn sure. I think Governor Lamont has done a great job at leading our state in this crisis. But giving regional boards the authority to approve their own budgets was his one mistake. That they were able to approve their own budget without input from the boards of selectmen or the boards of finance. But I would not want to be him right now. I mean, he's probably slept 5 hours in the last 2 weeks. So I'm not picking on him because there's only, I don't even know how many regional boards there are in the state of Connecticut. There's probably not a whole lot. And it was an oversight with his executive orders, I think. So on our
Here's one
side,
thing,
what's that?
Kev, if I may. The facts are that, and I'm looking at the Excel sheet, the budget summary sheet team. And if you want me to go online on site, seems like I've been doing it all day, and I don't mind it. I don't want to have the, whatever. What we are spending in the town, we got 3 segments, right? K through 6, Orange BOE, Amity. We are spending at Amity this projected year $660,000 more at Amity than we are in the town. Letting you know that.
And unfortunately, we have no say in that. They approved their own budget. It is what it is. It's part of our budget. Again, we're going to be able to, with comment, when we meet on the 18th, we can adjust any of our numbers based on public comment or anything else. And then we're going to set the mill rate. And I think we're the responsible body to do that. Again, our leaders in the state, PJ said he didn't sign up for this. I don't think the governor signed up for this.
I don't think so.
At least he gets paid.
He doesn't get paid enough.
PJ, you don't get paid.
PJ, tell me about it.
Well, Jim's putting a resolution forward so that we might get free gas for a couple of weeks. But
I don't drive my car, so.
I know that's.
Oh, God.
This is just insane.
Hey, it is. Remember, it's time to be at our best when things are not going well.
That's right.
That's it.
Good point.
And one last thing, and I don't want to be negative. I don't want to. I'm just, Jim.
The whole thing's been negative. What are you talking about?
But I have, and anybody can look this up. I do take, because we all take our job seriously. And I look at Westport and Wilton. I look at all these other, years ago, I brought up Westport's class size or Wilton's class size, whatever. So I look at surrounding towns, and anybody could go online, go to Cheshire Board of Education's website, and their minutes from April 23rd, just as, FYI, their finance director, and I have it in front of me, I'd be happy to send it to people, or you can go on their website, that since they're closing, and they, at this point, on April 23rd, they anticipated reopening on June 1st. They were hopeful. But their savings, and I don't know how they saved this, whether it's coaching and sports or whatnot, but it's in their minutes that they had saved because a member had asked, and the finance director gave them the data. And granted, this is a K through 12, not just, but most of the expenses are in the high school. Their estimated savings was $666,478. That's a
Good for
lot.
them.
And
Good for
when we look at our, as Jim shows us every year, thank God, how the Amity surplus grows, and I'm not picking on them, it's just a fact, grows in May and June every year for the last decade. If there's also a savings of even half this each month, that's a lot of money. And again, everybody gets to, we try to do our homework and cut, and everybody's phenomenal, but I just think we'll see what happens up there. But that's an awful lot of money. I think if it was half of that is saved on top of the usual May, June jump up at Amity, that we could have had a savings and there should have been no increase. And we should have been able to provide our residents with a flat tax rate or a slight decrease, but I think we did our best, and I thank everyone. So, John, what do we need to do? We need
All
a
right.
motion to,
You need a motion to send it to what we're gonna call a budget hearing on Monday, May 18th, to be followed. Well, I think you just could do that.
I would like to make that motion, John,
I'll second.
for the budget of 73,755,306, which is a 2.21% increase in the amount of an increase of 1,597,354. And Deb, any of the numbers, I can get them to you, or John can get them to you.
Jim, I think you got that exactly right.
I'll second.
Second by PJ. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, unanimous. All right, so John, we're all set with that.
Yes, thank you.
PJ, do we have a group hug?
Listen,
Yeah, you're up.
I was joking, obviously. I'm proud of the effort put forth by everybody. This was a very difficult budget, obviously, and
No, and I'm not trying to be, I'm not being sarcastic.
no, I know you're not, but
There is,
politics never comes into play.
I thank
You always
everyone
think about the
in their
Hey,
expertise.
Kev,
citizens.
Kev, why don't we, let's go once around, and PJ started, whatever people want to say. Left of PJ on my screen is Kevin Moffett. Kev?
As PJ said, and we've all said here tonight, this is a very difficult exercise. I've been here, I'm in my 17th year on this board, and other than the 08, this has been the toughest thing we've had to do. And you don't want to hurt anybody. John's talking, potential layoffs and things like that. And we don't want to do that. That's not why we're here. But it's a tough job. And I think we've done a great job collectively as a board with the presentation. The numbers are there. And that's what we have to deal with. So I'm very proud to be a member of this board, and looking forward to better times, hopefully, and we'll be around for that one as well. So that's it from the old guy.
Okay. Hey, Joe, you're next on my
The
screen.
wise guy.
Yeah, a wise one.
Joe, you're next.
Well, maybe Amity will give us a pleasant surprise with some extra surplus money. Let's see how it goes the next 2 months. Definitely a difficult exercise. I appreciate everybody's efforts. Jim, especially on the analytical side and research side, well done. I just think we are a good board, and we do very good work for the town. Wish you could have had a zero increase. We were close, but if Amity could have given a little bit, it would have been easy to get to. But unfortunately, we were unwilling to provide any relief at all. So it's unfortunate, but I commend all of us for a job well done.
Good. John?
I'm good. You guys all said my thoughts.
Okay. Pat?
I would just like to say, Again, it's wonderful that we work as a team, and I love the word that you use all of the time. And reading the write-up in Greenwich and hearing about caucuses and grief between groups, I can't see how that works to anybody's benefit. And I think the fact that we all work together, and I think everybody gives a little, takes a little, brings something to it, makes this a really amazing board. And for me, an amazing opportunity to be a part of my new town, although I've now been living here for 9 years. It's a really weird town when you live here for 9 years and you're still a newbie, but
Hey, Pat, I've been here since 83. So what's that make me? A 37-year man. I still feel like a rookie. Hey, that's no BS.
So you moved here the year I graduated from Amity.
Pat, Deb, no cat tonight, but we'd like you to provide perspective as you see it, please.
I missed the cat.
You miss my cat?
Yes.
I went to elementary school when High Plains was an elementary school, so I'm the longest resident in the town of Orange.
Did you have
I'm
Mr.
farther than
Weisenheimer
you.
from 5th grade?
I was at High Plains too, Deb.
So was I.
Who said that?
PJ.
PJ and Kevin. I
High
was,
Plains.
They
Yeah.
closed it. They closed it in 5th grade. So I had to go.
I hate to tell you guys, I was here before you all. I was here before Peck Place even opened up.
Hey,
I
Deb,
was the first class at High Plains that had the pool for gym.
Yeah,
Oh,
you were
I was
behind me too.
I was in 5th grade, and Dan Meisenheimer was my 5th grade teacher, and our gym class was swimming.
I think the only one that beats any of us is Kevin Moffat's wife. She was probably here when Marielle was Orange Center
Oh, yeah,
School.
She went to Marielle, and I think she was one of the first classes to go to the junior high. And at that time, the kids from Woodbridge came to that junior high as well. So yeah, she's been here a while.
And what's funny is she was the first class at Marielle. I was the last class with Miss Tracy at Marielle. When I graduated 6th grade, she had to retire.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Because of you?
I was a good kid.
Yeah.
It was his
Now
brother.
some of you
Stevie.
other Orange guys.
so we can get a good history. Now you know why me and Pat, with 36 and 9 years, why we feel like rookies, for God's sakes.
absolutely.
I'm
Yeah,
starting to
I
feel
moved here
comfortable,
in-
Jim, and it's 43 for me.
I beat you too because I moved here in 62.
Could I get a word in from Deb? Deb, what are you hearing out there? What are your thoughts?
I work at Racebrook School. I have to be guarded what I say, but I'm so disappointed in Amity. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Kev, your thoughts and wrap it up.
Which Kev?
You're the chief.
Oh, okay.
Here.
Mr. Moffat's wife is a legend in town, and we thank her for her service. And unfortunately, she's retired. But I thank everyone. John, we've had no emails, obviously. Are you muted?
I think he's muted.
Oh, he's looking, I think.
He's looking. Yeah, he's not muted.
Nothing. All right.
On that note,
All right. Well, I thank everyone.
We have to do an adjournment, Kev.
PJ, come on.
I couldn't ask for a better group of people to work with in these extremely difficult times. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And Mr. Shanley, I leave this to you.
at 9:30 on the dot, I make a motion to adjourn.
I
Is there a
second it. I second it.
Second by Pat. All
All right.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.